breaking barriers and bridging the gaps between patients and doctors. Welcome to Brainstorming with the Docs and your co-hosts, Dr. Glenn Harrison and Dr. Kolby Condos.
Everyone, welcome back to this week's episode of Brainstorming. I'm Dr. Kolby Condos, my co-host, Dr. Glenn Harrison over there. Say hi.
Hey, guys.
So today, after much discussion amongst the two of us, we decided that we were going to talk about one of the most commonly overlooked components of your total overall health, and that is sleep. So Dr. Harrison's going to start us off today. Get after it, buddy.
Yeah. First off, how are you doing, Dr. Kolby?
Good, man. Just busy, having a business and a wife and a kid. You know how it goes.
Mm-hmm. How was today? Did you find any interesting cases before we jump into this topic of sleep?
Yeah, so I actually had one case. It was a case I actually just got the blood results back. It was from probably about a week ago. The lady came in with some difficulty swallowing. She'd actually came in with really complex pain patterns in her left arm. And I ran some blood work on her, and yeah, she got some serious inflammation and some infections going on. She's actually got an autoimmune condition that we talked about in one of our previous podcasts. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm pretty excited because I think we're going to be able to do some pretty good things for her. So
awesome.
How about you?
So, well, there's been a few cases, but I'm going to still pick on you on this case because I think it's going to segue into our topic. Was there any problems with sleep, this case?
Yeah, so that was one of her big things, and we actually did a salivary panel to check for specific hormones, and that was definitely an issue. She had to where she thought she was sleeping a lot, but it seems like after some further investigation, she's not sleeping deeply and not sleeping for a lot of hours, and she's not sleeping for a lot of undisturbed time. So she's not actually getting into that deep sleep where she's feeling rested when she gets up. It's like periods where she's, she goes to sleep, but then she wakes up and she thinks it's because she has to go to the bathroom, but that's not the only issue.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I had to ask that because anytime there's these inflammatory conditions, as you know, everything gets worse. Inflammation gets worse without sleep. Autoimmunity risk gets higher without sleep. Parasitic infections, bacterial infections, anything aggravating the body or damaging or destroying the body progress without sleep. So sleep is everything. I always say sleep is the nutrient of survival.
It is. I actually just posted an interesting study to my Facebook page for my clinic, and they found in males that lack of sleep actually increases the amount of tau proteins that are deposited in their frontal lobe after one night of missed sleep. So these proteins that can cause, later onset dementia, Alzheimer's, those type of symptoms go up when you don't sleep.
Yeah. And so many of us, including myself, and I know you have, especially when we were in school, running on 2, 3, 4, lucky if we get 5 hours of sleep for not even months, but years. And we say, we're doing it, but there's a chronic damage going inside our body that we can't truly accept. So I guess to jump right into it. So what are when you see clinically, what are the big problems you see with sleep? Or I should say I always try to break it down between, when someone has a problem with sleep, I want to identify the characteristics of their problems with sleep. I want to know if they're having a difficulty falling asleep or staying asleep. Is there any other criteria that you look at?
Yeah, so I look at not only is it difficult to initiate the process of sleeping, right? So when you go to bed, are you laying in bed for hours without the ability to actually fall asleep? And then if you fall asleep, are you able to maintain that sleep? Or is it interrupted? Do you feel like you're getting up all the time to go to the bathroom? Do you feel like you are being woke up by really simple stimuluses? So a good example of this is if the neighbor has a dog, normally when people are sleeping, a dog barking 3-4 houses down or whatever will not wake you up. But if you are not in a deep restful sleep, then maybe, that dog barking does wake you up. So initiating sleep, maintaining sleep, frequency of interruptions of sleep, and then I just look at how they feel in the morning. Do they feel well rested? Do they wake up feeling refreshed, or do they feel groggy, like they didn't really get a good night's sleep? Are they fatigued? So that's kind of clinically how I start the process, and then I kind of break it down with labs and more tailored specific questions based on answers that they give me.
I think that's a great piece you said. We can go through, cut all the data and try to figure it out and look at labs and all this great stuff. But if the human still feels crappy in the morning, well, maybe there's still something wrong with the sleep, even though everything else looks good. So looking at the final product, how do you feel, right?
Right. Who cares if your labs are normal if you still feel like crap?
And the interesting thing is sleep is such a problem. And I know we're beating it up here, but it truly is. It's the nutrient for survival and thriving. There's nothing in this world that can replace sleep. There's no supplement. There's no drug. There's no procedure. It's just needed. And, statistically, we sleep 20% less than we did 100 years ago. And 100 years ago seems like a long time, but 20% less, it's got to have something. It's got to have something to do with our chronic illness. You touched on that. So by definition, what would you see clinically of insomnia? What would you see? How would you define insomnia?
I don't even know if I have the web.
Not by definition. What would you define it as?
Okay, so my definition of insomnia, actually, I have a perfect example of this. Actually, I have two of them, which is kind of crazy in the last month, where I have a 82-year-old that came in. I've seen him occasionally for other stuff, and he came in and he's like, I've heard through the grapevine that you can do lab tests for sleep. And I'm like, well, yeah, I can, but you've never complained of sleep before. And he goes, oh, that's, it's fine. But I'm only sleeping for about an hour or two a night. And it's been like that for 40 plus years. That would probably be a pretty good example of having insomnia. And he's not kidding. Like when I ran the salivary panels and everything on him, his curves are actually completely backwards from where they normally are. So he's sleeping 1 to 2. He says if he gets 3 hours a night, he feels like he's overslept. So that, and then the other one is a female, and she's in her late 50s, and she's the same thing. She's sleeping like 1 or 2 hours a night, and it's really starting to affect like not only her livelihood, because she says that she is like fatigued all day at work. She lacks energy all day at work. So yeah, I mean, those are two really classic examples of what I would classify as insomnia.
Yeah. So yeah, those are pretty severe cases. I see some of those in my office too, where there's this chronic exhaustion and they've been to 5, 6, 12 doctors, and they're like, oh, there's this fatigue. And then so they got the medication to try to fall asleep. They got a medication to try to stay asleep. They have the medication to calm them down. They have the medication. It's just medication we get. And then you get the natural doctors that are throwing handfuls of 5-HTP or melatonin at them and giving a thumbs up and say, that'll fix it. But when it's been going on for all these years, it doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're talking about, pharmaceuticals or supplements, it's not enough. There's going to be some reason. And that's what I really wanted to shed light on in this podcast. I think you defined it perfectly of criteria. So if people are having a hard time or having a problem with sleep, and you're listening to this, identify first and foremost, is it inability to fall asleep? Is it inability to stay asleep? Is it both? I would say if it's inability, now to try to dissect this, if it's inability to stay asleep, what would you be looking at first, Dr. Kolby? Someone who says I have a hard time to say, well, let's change that, to fall asleep.
Okay, so falling asleep, I would look at maybe what their habits are before going to bed, right? So I think that a big one with people is I always kind of preach like sleep health,
because like sleep hygiene.
Yeah, that's perfect. So, you look at it and what are you doing before you're going to bed? I usually watch, an hour and a half of, Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones, whatever.
And who's guilty of that?
Yeah.
Raise your hand.
I mean, I've been there.
Your hand.
Every once in a while, you're like, oh man, I just got to watch that next episode. But it's, that's stuff that's going to ramp up certain pathways in your neuraxis that are associated, depending on what you're watching, obviously, but is going to kind of ramp up that fight or flight response. Then on top of that, you look at the type of stimulus that's coming from those backlit electronics also is stimulating those specific parts of your body. So after the episode's all done, you're amped up, like, okay, watch this huge battle, and now I'm going to try to go to bed, right? Not necessarily a positive way to try to initiate sleep. So I always try to preach to my patients, like, at least 30 minutes before you are going to bed, shut off.
And get away from the blue light.
No cell phone, no
right.
TV, no laptop, no iPad, whatever.
Yeah, getting away from that blue light, you're saying, the screen time.
Yep.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So, and that and the rapid eye movements associated with doing that stuff can also drive those pathways. So that's another thing that maybe you don't think about.
Oh, okay.
Other than that, I look at when are they eating? What are they eating before they go to bed? Are they eating carbohydrates right before they go to bed? Or why they're watching their movie? Are they stuffing their face full of potato chips? Probably not very good. Those are rapidly digesting carbs, and that's going to cause a peak in blood sugar, and then shortly after that, it falls. Your body has got to adapt for that, because it has got to try to maintain normal sugar levels so that your brain is supplied with sugar even while you're sleeping. So,
yeah. And symptoms you'll see what that are is I see it where people are waking up in the middle of the night. They might fall asleep, because carbs, I see a lot of times people fall asleep, but they wake up between, you probably see similar, between 3 to 5 in the morning, and they can't fall back asleep. Or they have a harder time. They don't know why they're up, and then they're stimulated, so they can't fall asleep again. Sometimes people can, but it disrupts it. And what you're saying is bang on. Is what are you eating before, and are you able to keep your blood sugar nice and stable throughout the night? And that comes with foods before.
Well, I think a big part too is that, like you said, a lot of people don't actually know why they're waking up. Like, oh, I woke up, and they just assume, like, oh, I had to go to the bathroom. That's like, oh yeah, I woke up like 2-3 times last night, but it was just to go to the bathroom. Mm-hmm. Is it though? I mean, if you're diabetic, I guess it's a possibility.
But usually, and I have learned this, usually when people wake up, they're like, oh, my bladder's kind of half full. It's not urgent, but I'm up anyway. I better do this to take care of it. And then they wake up, they turn the lights on, they get more stimulated. But the having to go to the bathroom wasn't really the trigger. They were up anyway, and they figured they go to the bathroom, and then they assume that's why they woke up.
Right.
So that's maybe some strategies to help fall asleep, a lack of stimulation. And I've also seen, be careful if you are really hyperstimulated. I have this entrepreneur I'm working with, and the moment she reads a book on business, that's it. She's wired, and she just keeps flipping pages. And I asked her, I said, well, what if you listen to a podcast or, she said, that does the same thing to me. So I think you might not even need blue light, but if you have something that stimulates your personality, that could keep you in that rhythm. A lot of people make mistakes working to the last minute. I see that as well, or catching up on chores for that hour before bed, and then they lay down in bed and they're wondering, did I get everything done? Did I get everything done? And they're not at that calm state, and they can't hit that true REM sleep.
Yep, absolutely. Anything that stresses you, right? So you fight with your spouse right before you go to bed. Do you think you're going to get a good night's sleep? No. Yeah. Nobody's sleeping good that night.
Yeah, that's true. So a few things to fall asleep and staying asleep. You talked about blood sugar, keeping it balanced. Then there's all the cortisol and melatonin patterns. We won't necessarily get into all of that. A lot of people, and then another one, maybe you want to touch on oxygen and what's sleep apnea.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, you think about oxygen, when you look at the type of basically energy production in our body, with oxygen, you make 36 energy molecules. Without it, you make like, what is it, 2 or 7? I can't remember.
I can't remember that. Yeah.
Less, significantly less, right? So if you are not breathing, then you're not getting oxygen. You're not getting oxygen. You're not able to basically initiate and sustain those restorative processes that are associated with, sleep. So you're not replenishing your energy. You're not able to, repair any sort of cellular damage that you've done. You are actually pushing inflammation at that point. So if you have sleep apnea, or if you stop sleeping during, while you're sleeping, or, you have someone, your significant other, whatever, is a significant snorer, or they stop breathing periodically, then that's definitely something that you need to look at, is consider sleep apnea, because that can dramatically affect people's ability to sleep, stay asleep, and the quality of sleep, because they're not actually getting restful sleep.
Mm-hmm. So that's one of the first things the medical community will do with sleep studies. They'll make sure that you're not, your heart isn't stopping and there's no sleep problem. So make sure that's not a variable in this whole problem, or in this whole piece. So we talked a little bit about what sleep does. It's regenerative, for cognitive, your brain, your body. What happens when you don't get it? I know you talked about tangles. You talked about all the neurodegenerative effects. What other things do you see clinically?
Yeah,
With people suffering, or their sleep is, they can't wait. That's always the first thing that gets thrown out. Bedtime gets pushed out.
Right. One of the common things that I see is actually like people that come in and they're like, oh, I'm suffering from adrenal fatigue, right? I've been told I have adrenal fatigue. Well, why? That's one of those things that we've talked about this before, where it's kind of like drives you crazy a little bit. But
yeah, that's 3 this week and it's only Tuesday.
So it's like, people come in, they're fatigued, they are falling asleep, or they just have low energy levels throughout the day. They feel like they're struggling to maintain their energy levels. They feel like they're failing to thrive. I had a lady that came in today, and I don't know if it's associated with sleep, but maybe like an increased stress level where her pain is all over the place. Something that normally wouldn't hurt, say, she came in with like a pretty simple case of bursitis, which just manifested itself huge. So that inflammatory loop, honestly, you just don't do anything well if you're not sleeping well.
Mm-hmm.
You're not functioning at your highest level. You're super inflamed. You're messing with these nitric oxide synthase pathways. You're messing with these pro-inflammatory cytokines that are all going all over the place. So you just don't do anything well. Except for inflame yourself if you're not.
Not to mention the emotional problem.
Right.
Mm-hmm. I think it's absolutely impossible to be sleep deprived chronically and be happy, and humble. Mm-hmm. So I think it creates a problem. So let's jump into strategies here before we wrap this up. First off, what are the medical, I kind of butchered a little bit of the medical system when we started. What medical strategies do you see for people that are fatigued and say, oh, doc, I can't sleep?
So I have, you see like the Lunestas and the, all that kind of stuff, which I can't remember.
Talking like Ambien.
Yeah, Ambien, Lunesta, those are options. Again, with the like sleep studies, that's a big one. And that actually can be really, really helpful if that's actually an issue where you're not breathing, where you're not maintaining a positive airway. So it's collapsing while you're asleep. So sleep studies, Ambien, Lunesta, those are two really common pharmaceuticals that are used. I actually have had patients that have been recommended exercise, which is one of the things that I do with my patients, is maybe change their exercise regimen and shift it to a different part of the day. Those are all, that one was, I was like super stoked about when they came in and told me that one. So yeah, those are 3 options that I've seen. Those are just 3 I've seen in the last month.
What do you see with natural strategies?
Oh man,
what do? Well, yeah. What I know we could go down this road quite a ways. But,
yeah. So again, like I said, I always try to figure out what the patient's main concern is. Or is it inability to start or stay?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of tailor my approach from there. But I usually do salivary panels to kind of determine the hormone levels, because there's certain curves that you can look at that kind of help you distinguish what the issue is. And then I do stuff like balancing blood sugar. I do a lot of exercise, and then occasionally you can start to do the 5H or the 5H, and melatonin and stuff like that. But then you have to look into why that's low in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
So I just try to do like really in depth. The 2 biggest things that have helped my patients lately is like the exercise, and the diet.
Yeah, I think that's similar with me. They usually come in and there's a handful of pills, or a shopping cart full of pills, supplements and drugs, and I'm first very quick to try to figure out their life. Are they in a hyper irritated state, a hyper stressed state? What is their home life? Are they relaxed? Is there interruptions? Trying to get a chance of their personality. That'll give me an indication. Are they wound up before bed, or are they just in a severe lethargic state? And then, like you said, is it inability to fall asleep or stay asleep? Or are they sleeping 15 hours and they're still tired when they wake up? I have that too. And then we're on the hunt for infections and viral issues where their body is struggling and they're just requiring a bunch of sleep. So please, if you're listening to this podcast or you're watching it and you've been dealing with a really bad cold, or I don't know, you went through trauma and you're in the hospital and you come out and you're tired, well, you might be just recovering, but it shouldn't last over 2 months, 3 months. It should not last over that. And if it is, that's already a chronic state. So I'll try to look in the front end and make sure there's a lack of stimulation and finding calming strategies, making sure the blood sugar, that's absolutely key. And you'll find that with panels and with your cortisol melatonin rhythms. And then, of course, if it's inability to stay asleep, that, like you said, it's more of cortisol, melatonin, blood sugar, that whole spider web. So hopefully that gives some people some purpose and some desire and some urgency in recognizing that there is no supplement for sleep. There's no replacement for sleep. And I get so many people that are so tired and they don't look at the first basic thing of quality of sleep. And they don't look at sleep. They're jacked up on coffee and Red Bull and everything else to get them through the day, and it's a crutch. So hopefully that opens up that door. Do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, prioritize sleep, people. That's important, right? Yeah, all of us are guilty of it. I'm guilty of it. I know Dr. Harrison's also guilty of it.
Oh yeah, I would say it's my biggest challenge in my health regimen, and it's the first piece that I introduce in all of my wellness programs. And if people don't do that, if they don't get their sleep figured out solid, and they're consistent and extremely disciplined with all their sleep hygiene, the next step won't matter. And the next step won't matter. And the next step won't matter. That's why that's the first piece.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. So anyway, I hope this was helpful. I guess that's a wrap, Dr. Kolby.
Yeah. Obviously, if you guys got value from this, please, like and subscribe or share it with friends, family members, people you love. And stay tuned, because we're going to try to do this really regularly and start to break down some other common health concerns or conditions. If there's something that you guys would like us to cover, you can email us at info@brainstormingwiththedocs.com.
Yeah.
And that's the way that you can get in contact with us. Reach out to us, and we'd be more than happy to try to put one together for you. Or if you have questions with how you can get in contact with us personally or whatever, that's a good way of getting in contact with us. Otherwise, you can look at our individual websites. Mine is www.northlakeschiropractic.com. You can find us on Facebook. North Lakes Chiropractic and Functional Neurology is our page on Facebook. Dr. Harrison, yours is?
www.drgharrison.com, or you could just Google the Center of Functional Medicine Denver. You'll find us. A lot of content, a lot of information in conjunction with all these podcasts and videocasts.
Sounds good, man. Well, I feel like this was a good one. I think we're finally getting our rhythm.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to do the next one with you.
All right. You have a great night, Dr. Kolby.
All right, buddy. I'll talk to you soon.